What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Unit 1 test mega review. So a lot of this test is going to be understanding the terms and applying them. This test is going to be a mix of what we call stimuli and non-stimuli questions. Now, what I mean by that, a stimuli question is something that might have like a graph in it, or a map in it, or a census survey in it. Whereas a non-stimuli question is just kind of what we would call a basic recall question. Do you know this definition or not? There's also going to be one written portion, but what that is not is an essay. It's not an essay question. Whenever you have a written portion, it's going to be a question with a stimulus or multiple stimuli, and it's going to give you like an A, B, C, D, E style of question. Those aren't optional. If it gives you A, B, C, D, or E, you need to answer each one of those. That's the bad news. But the good news is that each one only needs to be about 2 to 3 sentences max. If you're saying more than that, you're saying too much. The test total is going to have less than 30 questions on it and then one written portion. As we move on, you're going to have more than that because eventually the AP test is going to have 60 questions with 3 written portions. So let's go ahead and go through the terms. The particularly important terms, they're going to come up at least once and probably multiple times on the test, are going to be accompanied by some red alarms, meaning that they are very, very, very important and you need to tune in. Now, the first term that I want to talk about is the census, and this is going to come up a lot on the test. The census counts the population of a nation, state, or other geographic region. It records information about the population's characteristics such as age, gender, and occupation of people living there. It takes individual households. It is going to show up on the test a lot. Make sure that you understand that the census is basic gathering of geographic data to make assumptions about a place. If a place has a big population, they're going to get more representation in the government. If a place has small population, they're going to get less. And they're going to use that information, the government will, to determine what sort of needs that area has. So remember that there are 2 types of geography. There is physical geography, which is the study of spatial characteristics of various elements of the physical environment, like weather and climate, ecosystems and biomes, and then like volcanism and erosion. Physical geography, what we can sort of feel. And then human geography, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the study of spatial characteristics of humans and human activities. Stuff like population, culture, economics, urban areas, and then politics. Remember that in everything we are taking the spatial perspective, basically putting on our geography glasses and looking at how we can identify, explain, and predict the human and physical patterns in space and how different spaces are connected with each other. Basically, remember, human geography is the why of where. Why is that there, and why does it matter? Remember the difference in absolute and relative location. Absolute location is the precise spot where something is according to latitude and longitude, maybe the address. And then relative location is basically like, hey, that thing is over there. Take a right at the stop sign and you'll be there. Or, I don't know, it's something like a football field away. Relative location is not concrete, whereas absolute location is. And then remember, latitude is the distance north or south of the equator. Remember that the equator runs like this along the globe. And then longitude is the distance east or west of the prime meridian. Longitude, going like this. Prime meridian is an imaginary line that runs from pole to pole through Greenwich, England. It is designated as 0 degrees longitude. Now, just a couple of smaller terms to remember that might not pop up on the test as much, but whenever you come back to watch this video as you prepare for the AP test, these will be good to remember. Remember that space refers to the physical gap or interval between 2 objects, the space between things. And then place refers to your location or something's location. And then flows, the way that things move. The flow of people, goods, money, ideas, materials between locations near or far. And then distance decay and time-space compression. Remember, these 2 go hand in hand. Distance decay is the idea that the farther away from something you are, the less likely you are to use it. Whereas time-space compression is the idea that you can sort of cut down on distance decay with things like cell phones or letters or TVs. Now let's move on to types of maps. And there are going to be a lot of maps on this test. Remember, it is so important, I can't stress this enough, all maps have a distortion of some kind. It is unavoidable when you take a spherical object and put it onto a flat paper. The two main projections that you are going to need to know are the Mercator projection. The Mercator projection is a projection of a map of the world onto a cylinder in such a way that all the parallels of latitude have the same length at the equator, used especially for marine charts. Basically sailors used this chart. And then the Robinson projection. The Robinson projection is a map projection of the world which shows the entire world at once. The big thing about the Robinson projection is that it specifically was meant as a compromise map. Everything is a little bit wrong, but nothing is totally wrong. And remember that the problem is always the sizes of Africa or Greenland, among other things, but that's the big problems that you can see in most maps. Remember, there are political maps. Political maps show countries, boundaries, cities. They're very, very formal. And then a physical map, which shows mountains, rivers, physical features. Often these two overlap. And then a topographic map, which shows the Earth's terrain from above. Then a choropleth map, which uses color to show data. Speaking of geographic data, this is going to come up on the test, and it is so important. Geographic data is any data used to better understand the geography of the Earth and its people. Remember that we collected geographic data in our class, just asking people about their interests, where they are from, what sort of objects they own. We went through our house and we gathered objects and tried to determine where they came from, and based on that, we want to make assumptions. Oh, it looks like China produces a lot of stuff. Or the census. The census is a great example of geographic data, talking about people, where they live, how many people live in your household, how many of them are under the age of 16. Wow, there are a lot of young kids in this area. We better put a playground there. And remember that there is qualitative data, which is data that describes qualities or characteristics. Basically, qualitative data is less concrete and usually is involved in an opinion of some sort. And then quantitative data, which is very hard numbers, data in the form of counts and numbers where each data set has a unique numerical value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quantitative data is much more concrete. And then such a big thing here, human-environment interaction. This is the way that humans interact with their environment. And there are two schools of thought when you look at human-environment interaction. There's environmental determinism, where basically human nature is controlled by the physical environment. Basically, we are totally at the behest of the environment in this school of thought. This is a little bit more of an old school of thought. The newer school of thought is environmental possibilism. The idea that humans have much more ability to produce a result from the Earth than environmental determinism that says we can't control the Earth. So environmental possibilism basically says humans have an ability to control the Earth to some extent. Environmental determinism would say humans have no ability to control the Earth. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is mapping software like geographic information systems, which is a sophisticated mapping software that helps somebody locate places and give characteristics about them. We get this information from things like satellites and drones. For example, after Hurricane Ida, we had drones flying overhead of the school looking at, okay, what's the damage? What do we need to repair? That's a great example of a geographic information system. And that allows us to create multiple layered maps so that we can see not just what a place looks like, but also what humans have built there, what the real physical characteristics there are. A really big thing when you looking at maps, analyzing maps, particularly GIS, Geographic Information System maps, is scale of analysis or scale of inquiry. Basically, the size and scope of what is being studied. If you look at something too close, you don't see anything zoomed out. For example, if you're only looking at a city, that doesn't tell you the story of a whole state or the whole country. But if you're looking at the whole country, which would be a national scale of analysis, that would not give you the idea of individual cities. So make sure that you know there's a global scale of analysis, which is the whole Earth, a national scale of analysis, which is individual countries, a regional scale of analysis, places like the South, and then local scale of analysis, which is down to like cities or parishes or counties. Remember the different types of regions. Regions are areas on the Earth basically that are distinct from one another. Formal regions are areas that have shared traits. This can be places that are within an individual state or places where the Rocky Mountains run through. Formal regions are large areas that share distinct characteristics, whereas functional regions are areas organized by function around a focal point or node. Again, I've always used the example of a suburb. You live in a suburb. The function of that region is to have a place to live for people who work in the city. And then perceptual or vernacular regions. These are regions that aren't really made of anything, but they're based on how people feel about a place. Again, like the South or like the Middle East. So that's all that I've got for you guys. If you have any questions, please email me. You're going to kill this test. You got it.